About Murray Kreiger, who I mentioned before and who I worked with, and who was such an important figure in the growth to prominence of UCI's English department, along with Hazard Adams, and I hope Mike in a minute will speak more about them. I think that they were very dynamic. I had been at graduate school at Cornell, which is a highly regarded department at the time. In fact, one of my old teachers just died on Friday, M.H. Abrams, who was 102 years old and was a very important figure early on for what has become critical theory. Both Murray and Hazard, who was the chair at the time I came, I think you came 72, I came 75, so I'm trying to think who might have been immediately before him, but they were dynamic figures. They really wanted to do something with our department, which was a department at that time and remained for many years of English and comparative literature. In more recent years, those two departments have parted ways, and I think it's partly because they started out as very small and grew and became important, and we had different needs in those two different parts of the department, and so there was a decision that they would each be departments in their own right, so that we could say, hire somebody in Asian American, and they could hire somebody in, say, Japanese, where the limiting factor in terms of English didn't matter to them. At any rate, both Hazard and Murray really put the department forward, and for a long time it was the highest ranked graduate department in the university. I think it remains so in critical theory. I think it was listed as third in the nation this year. But they had a vision for what they wanted the department to be, and one of the things I remember most strongly is that when I was coming to Irvine, I was interviewed by a number of other schools. And one of the other schools was relatively new, just getting going, and I would have been maybe the fourth member of the department. And I said, tell me, if you had a model of the right way to be doing things, what school would you name? And the answer came back, University of California at Irvine.
Yeah, that was true for graduate students too, as well as young faculty. Irvine was doing something radically different. People outside the field often don't really understand what literary theory is. In its broadest form, it's basically a study of the philosophy of literature, from Plato to now. It encompasses a wide range of topics. And what was interesting about Irvine is that in the hands of Murray Kreiger and Hazard Adams, and not much after that, Wolfgang Iser, Hillis Miller, Jacques Derrida, Jean-François Lyotard, Irvine brought some of the leading lights in that field to the Irvine campus, and the amount of energy and a sense of really revolutionary fervor among the faculty and the graduate students attracted people from all over the world here. So that rather than studying literature by historical period necessarily or by biography, you could study it according to various kinds of philosophical issues. And this really excited people who were just like myself, who were just starting out to try to imagine what it was like to have a scholarly career studying literature. And Irvine was the place to do that. It was a period of immense excitement. And another interesting fact about Irvine, and Bob, you know this, and it's reflected in the hiring of you too, is that it wasn't interested in a particular kind of theory, but a broad range of theoretical perspectives that were put in dialogue at the time. And there was just, it's really hard to overstate the amount of excitement and interest that it brought to the campus, most concretely in the formation of the School of Criticism and Theory, which had its first meetings while I was a graduate student, and I think 76 was the year, 76, 77. and brought, in addition to the faculty here, the best scholars from all over the world who taught in a seminar series during the summer, and who brought graduate fellows to the campus, some of whom stayed on throughout the year. So that in addition to the graduate students in the PhD program, and in addition to the faculty on the UCI English and Comp Lit faculty, you had these very prominent and distinguished visitors and highly motivated graduate students and fellows around for the whole year. So it was an extraordinarily exciting time with a lot of innovation and a lot of changes that were going on, which remain today. The School of Criticism Theory continues to flourish at Cornell, as you know. The theoretical perspective on the study of literature, which basically argued you could ask other kinds of questions rather than biographical or historical, now dominates the field. And it's a much transformed field because of the impact of Irvine during those years.
I was trying to get them to come back here, and in fact got them to meet here on campus. It was Murray and I. Murray was a fellow, so he extended the invitation, but in the meantime he took sick and he died. But when the School of Criticism Theory came here to have its annual meeting, we were able to give a memorial for Murray in which I and Dominic LeCapra and Jacques Derrida participated. And if anybody says Derrida doesn't have a sense of humor, they would have to hear the talk that he gave. In fact, there are some funny things involved with the coming of some of the major figures you've mentioned. For instance, when Hillis Miller came to this campus in 1989, he had turned down Stanford. He had turned down UCLA. And I was at a UCLA party, and somebody there from Berkeley said, "Do you really think Hillis Miller is going to go to Irvine?" And I was feeling very good about it. I'd known him for a long, long time. I had taught his son at the University of Rochester when he was an undergraduate there, and it looked very good. Yet at the same time, one knew he had been wooed all over, said no. So as I was standing there, it was like those E.F. Hutton ads. He said, "Do you really think that he's going to come to Irvine?" Suddenly everybody was around me. And I was feeling good about it, but I knew if he didn't come, I'd be haunted to the end of my days with people pointing their fingers at me and saying, "There's the guy who thought that Hillis Miller was going to go to Irvine." So I said, I think it's about 50-50. And behind me was the voice of Sandy Welsh at UCLA. And he said, "Surely 60-40, Bob," which got a big laugh at the time, but I feel I had the last laugh and also picked up 3-to-1 odds from my friend at Berkeley when he came. When Hillis was thinking about coming, he said to Derrida, "I'd like to go to Irvine, but I'll have to leave you, Jacques." And Jacques said, "Don't worry, I'll come too." And soon, with the help of Bill Lilliman, who was at that time Executive Vice Chancellor, we had a twofer that we didn't expect.
Yeah, those were heady times. The School of Criticism and Theory moved on as it was designed to do. It was supposed to be kind of a traveling roadshow, rotating around universities every 5 years, I think. It's been at Cornell now a long time, but it remains a lasting legacy of the Irvine campus. In addition to the School of Criticism Theory, of course, at about that time, the Humanities Research Institute was brought to Irvine. You know a lot about that.